Welcome to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I am your host, Tricia Carr. Thanks for joining me today. Now, we are actually live broadcasting this, as we always do, at 11 a.m. Pacific on Sunday, and this happens to be Easter Sunday. So if that is important to you, then happy that day. And then it's also, there is some, I think we're around Passover. I know they don't actually perfectly align. They intentionally don't perfectly align. Did you guys know that? That when this holiday was created, it intentionally happened the third Sunday after the equinox, so it would never fall on the 14th and 15th of Nisan, which is Passover. All right, I'm on a thing. But anyway, just talking about how holidays are actually composed for us. So that is what today is. And if that is important to you, then I send all of my love and blessing to you as you celebrate being with your family. That's what a lot of people do, and celebrate the change of the seasons. So thanks for joining me, and however you are, you can watch it live on YouTube. It actually live streams on my channel, which you can find at youtube.com/Tricia Carr. Of course, I post other videos there as well. Did you guys know I have a second podcast? I hardly ever mention it on this podcast. It's called Enlightened AF. It is a comedy podcast, but we kind of poke fun at the ego and of ourselves. I have a co-host. His name is Aiden Demarest. Watch out. Aiden's weird. Right, Kurt?
Yeah, simply, yeah.
So you could check out Enlightened AF. Just go find it on a podcast feed. We do also have a YouTube channel, and we live stream there. Right now, our time slot is Thursdays at 7 p.m. Pacific. All right, one last thing I want to mention to you, my website, triciacarcharm.com. I have actually opened up in my calendar again some one-on-one sessions particularly for my intuitive sessions with people. But in my people sessions, you can also add an animal communication portion. And so we do energy healing, we do mediumship, we do ability assessment, I read your field, I channel a lot. It happens a lot of the time. So we just do anything that is in your highest good. So I welcome you to go check it out. Just go to my website and find Work With Me. You'll find sessions for humans, animals, and you'll also find my Mystic Arts Academy, where I have on-demand programs there, and one that's coming up live, but I'm not going to talk about that right now because I am tired of hearing me, and I want to hear my guest, who is a transformational musician, a metaphysical counselor. He has a background in audio engineering and addiction therapy, and he also has a history as a creative director for Vision Magazine, which is this really awesome magazine, San Diego-based. It's actually a print magazine. They actually print things still, but it's focused on conscious living and spiritual empowerment. And he's been on the show before. Welcome back, Patrick Haize. Thanks for being here.
Hey, wow, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Yes, as we remarked before the show, you have a lovely background. You guys have to check it out because you're in Sedona. Powerful place.
Oh, yeah, we love Sedona. We moved to Maui for a year. About 9 months ago, we moved back because we just love it here so much. And, if it's competing with Maui, it's got to be an amazing place.
And neither place disappoints. Both very high energy there. Actually, I have a friend who just visited Sedona, and she came back was visiting like power spots and everything. And she came back having vortices. She came back having really intense deja vu experiences to where she panicked a little bit, thought she had a neurological disorder, but it evened out. Yeah. She balanced out the energy.
Yeah, a lot of people have that kind of experience here.
Yeah.
The land is really powerful. All the red rocks have a lot of iron oxide in them. So it acts kind of like a battery because it gets struck by lightning. More than most places on the planet. I've heard actually it's the place that gets struck by lightning more than anywhere. I'm not sure, I haven't verified that, but it does get struck with a lot of lightning. And so that paired with the iron oxide, it's like walking on a big battery.
Oh my gosh.
Tons of energy, in the land, and that really brings things up for people. So it gets their energy moving, and yeah, people have a lot of experiences like that here.
So it's physical in addition to metaphysical, because there are all these vortices, these energetic vortices.
Right.
If you guys have heard me talk a lot about Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar, and their ship, Bashar is an Essasanian entity, sixth dimension. I think he's 60. He doesn't really claim anything. Anyway, he's a benevolent ET helping us, and their ship is actually anchored over Bell Rock there in Sedona, as I heard him say.
Yeah, that's what I've heard also.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So it's intense for sure.
And I actually, just to share with you, my husband's grandmother, she passed before we were together, but she was kind of a famous artist in her day, and she did a lot of painting of the red rocks all through the Pacific Southwest, I guess it would be. Yeah, but especially in Arizona because they're from there. So I guess I have a little bit of a kind of energetic lineage there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of art inspiration that came here. In fact, Walt Disney had a ranch. I guess it's still called the Disney Ranch. Obviously, he's not alive anymore. But you can even see from Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner
yes.
the influence that he got from Sedona.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of artistic influence here for sure.
Wow, that's cool. Well, anyway, let's get to talking about your work. You are, oh my gosh, I just love your YouTube channel. You guys, you go check out, actually, I should say a lot of my listeners are already following you. As I put up the promotion for our episode, I got a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, I just started following Patrick, or oh my gosh, I followed him this year, and I'm so excited you guys are going to be talking. So hello to everyone who is excited to hear Patrick on the show. He's amazing. Oh, by the way, I have to say hello to the Lightworkers Lab too. That is online spiritual community of which I am a guide and a moderator. Find us on Facebook, join us, and get to expressing yourself. So Patrick, you have so much going on all the time. Tell everyone about what you've been working on since we last had you on the show, music, and you have a course coming up. And yeah, I just love everything that you do. Yeah. Wow. So when did we talk? I think we were in Hawaii last time that we spoke. I remember that. I think it was probably, when you and Bridget came on together, his partner is Bridget Nielsen, who's amazing. And you guys came on around Valentine's Day of last year, I believe it was. Okay, right. But I don't remember if you came on before or after that because you were kind of proximate to it. So it's been over a year either way. It's been a while. Yeah, so a lot has happened. Let's see. So we were in we were in Maui, and Maui was an extremely opening experience for me in the the presence realm. So I did a lot of presence work and coming back into balance. Sedona is a little bit more activating in kind of like a get things done kind of energy for me. Yeah. And Hawaii is very much like you could just dissolve into the sand and like melt. And so from that experience, I definitely had a lot of personal growth regarding my ability to move into deeper presence and just relax more into my beingness. That was extremely beneficial for me in transcending some of the deeper subtle tensions that I had in myself just from traumas in life and growing up as a human. Yeah. So in my own personal path, that was a big step, definitely moving to Hawaii. What I've been working on is, so presently I am working on a new EP. So I have a 5-song album that I should be finished recording here in the next few weeks. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm pairing with a musician called Momentology, who's somebody that I worked with on my Soul's Recognition track, if you've heard that one. Yep. And I've done, Moon Goddess is another song I did with him. So we're doing a 5-song EP, and that's exciting. And I just finished a course called Soul Spark, which is a course that is really aimed to help people that are having trouble getting started or sparking their soul, and or people that really feel blocked or stuck, because that's something that I really experienced firsthand, really hardcore. I don't know if you guys know my background. I come from a background of heavy drug addiction, and I've been clean for 8 years, but it was a theme in my life from a very young child up until my mid-20s. So having that experience of really being blocked and not being able to move forward in life and not knowing what it takes to step into yourself and actually start having confidence and start being able to take action on your path. I've kind of distilled all of the lessons that I've learned throughout that process and put that in my first course, because I feel like before I start releasing newer courses or any other content that I release, to really be able to integrate that content and activate upon it, you'd have to have these kind of prerequisites in place. So I wanted to get that out as my first course, and that's something it's out on Teachable. I haven't marketed it yet or promoted it. I guess while I'm promoting it right now, this is the first promotion I'm doing for it. But so that's something that I just recently put out, and I've really just been focusing on then my YouTube channel and then my personal work. So I've been doing a lot more videos. I've ramped up to 3 videos a week, and that's been a fun experience to move into. And yeah, that's why I say where I'm at now. We do have a link for the Soul Spark course in the description, however it is that you're watching or listening, including on the podcast version of this. So if you're listening on iTunes and you are driving to work, when you get to work, pull over and click down into the description, and you'll be able to, follow that link to see the Soul Spark course that Patrick has available. That's amazing. What is the Soul Spark is like, what is the format of it? Like, how is it video, and what is the media like, and what is the timing and all that kind of stuff? A little more about that.
So it's multimedia. So I have videos. There's let's see, I think about like 11 videos in there, and then there are 2 audio MP3s. One's kind of more motivational, one's more meditative breakthrough training. Mm-hmm. And then I have text also. So I think it's like it's over 3,000 words of text guiding you through it also. So it's quite a multimedia experience. And yeah, I take people through the process that I've kind of, like I said, that I've distilled for how to develop belief in yourself where maybe you didn't feel like you had belief before, and then change some core beliefs regarding our relationship to the things that we want to do in life. So creating a relationship towards work that is actually beneficial, meaning a lot of people shy away from things and they don't necessarily have the desire to earn the things that they want. So I work a lot with how to build the desire to actually earn it instead of just get something or have something. And then also some practical actualization tools as far as how to organize your life so that you can actually have an environment that's supportive of taking action towards the things that you want to take action towards in life.
Really powerful stuff. Yeah, all of the work that you do, all of the different kind of media that you put forward, your music and your videos, they definitely have they have downloads. I mean, they have packages of downloads, energy. There's like a specific kind of programming that is embedded in them. I'm assuming this is a conscious effort. This is like how you charge it up. You charge up the energy with intention for that kind of download to unfold in the people who connect with it.
Definitely. Yeah. It's that's always the intention. And sometimes it comes through clearer than other times. It tends to be that when something's really exciting me, that's when I know that it's right. Mm-hmm. And so, it's interesting. We get all these different downloads in our life and we learn all these different things. And then sometimes there are these moments when all of a sudden, like, your understanding of what you already know becomes clearer and it becomes communicatable in a new way. And then that new communication is exciting to you. And so I try to capture those moments as best as I can, and that's really been, honestly, a challenge in a lot of ways, to orchestrate my video capturing process to really bring that through. So how do I do that? I've played with different things, and the new thing I'm going to be trying now is doing a lot more outside videos, and so I'm going to be doing them outside with a handheld camera, and that feels like an opportunity for me to be able to bring more through, because when I'm outside, it seems like that's when it flows the best. Mm-hmm. But then I'm also playing with, when I'm inside, bringing it through. So yeah, I set a strong intention, and I try to distill some really practical and useful ways of being able to ingest a bigger download. And, the way I actually talk about it, I think a good way of saying it is that, the transmission is the energy.
Yeah.
And the words and the descriptions are like carrier waves for the energy. Mm. And so it's like, you got to kind of prep the mind space by giving thoughts and metaphors and ideas that harmonize enough with the vibration that the vibration can make it through. If you don't kind of prep the mind, then it doesn't come through in the same way. What I'm trying to bring through is both an emotional, energetic transmission, as well as something that's intellectually satisfying too. Because if you just have one without the other, it's not the complete package. Mm. And so, bringing those together, it's a challenge. That's part of it, because sometimes you get the download, and it doesn't always mean that the download is the energy is necessarily present every time that you try to go share it. So trying to make it magical and have the essence be present and coming through as you're bringing the ideas through is definitely a balancing act. But yeah, it's definitely something that I aim for and intend to do. with what I share.
Balancing act. And what I hear and how you just described that, which was eloquent and really true. You were saying the download is the transmission, is the energy. Yes, is the transmission. So that to me sounds like that is, if we're talking about the triune or the Trinity aspect of being mind, body, and spirit. So then the download would be the spirit. The words you said are like the frequencies, or how did you say the words were actually the
words are like I think I like the
radio
to use
waves,
the word carrier wave.
Carrier
right,
waves,
so
yeah.
It's a carrier wave.
That's
so
like
it's like the words carry the frequency.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like a metaphor of the frequency.
Yeah.
So if you could think of like reality and like people in the reality
Mm-hmm.
being a metaphor for some higher spiritual numinous existence,
Yeah.
right? And then like the physical world has these like physical archetypes or artifacts that are kind of like representations of this greater energy that exists on a different realm. So words are very much like that also.
They're like the body is what I was thinking. And the triune being,
like, in a sense, they're like a body, but it's like one level down or one level up. So it's like the body for a spiritual truth that comes through to the mental sphere, but then can also penetrate. So it like exists in several dimensions.
Yeah.
So
there's overlap always
like
between the triune aspects of a complex. There's it's a continuum. And then the metaphors, you said prep the mind with the metaphors and the stories. So that's then the mind aspect. And it actually answered when you were, while you were giving that, it answered the question that I was going to ask about, because essentially, like you're saying, download is channeling. When you're presenting with speech, you are channeling. And so sometimes channels and channeling situations, having the body and the mind all coalesce is sort of the balance, So I love that you say prep the mind with the metaphors. And because that'll help, those are just some tools that then become available. But those also become available in the moment as well as you're presenting. Yes?
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, that's when a lot of the magic comes through, is that when things you hadn't necessarily planned on saying. And I mean, you plan on bringing something through that is in theme with what you intended, but then a specific metaphor, specific angle of it comes through, and you can feel that like this was inspired, and it came through in a certain way that really lights it up, in a way that really can't be brought through outside of spontaneity. So you appreciate when that happens, definitely.
When I prep for a class, I do an outline, and no matter how thorough I make that outline, it's like 40 to 50% of it is still, you could say, channeled or improvised or, spontaneously in the presence, it comes through. And not only that, but sometimes I feel like, oh, that just came through fresh. And then I looked down at my outline. I was like, oh, it was in my outline. I forgot. Because you become so present that you forget, the planning on either side of it. And I heard Marianne Williamson say, in actually this little class that I took from her called Teaching the Teachers or Teaching for Teachers, something like that. And she talked about how she says like a jazz musician has practiced his riffs over and over. And that's prepping the mind with the metaphors and the stories. But then when you get up and to present or to play your, the craft, then you've practiced your riffs. You have a lexicon basically that you're studied in, you're a scholar in, but then you kind of let it rip and you have to become present. Yes. And then that's that's the download in activity. Yeah. Well,
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's really important because I think that's something that sometimes is not fully understood or honored sometimes in the conscious community, in the sense that there's so much of a focus on flow.
Yeah.
It's always like, well, just in the flow, and you flow everything and it's all spontaneous and it's all off the top of the head. And like, that's all good and right. Like we should definitely focus on flow. But then there's also foundation building that's necessary in order for that flow to truly be able to reach its higher potentials. And you just mentioned that when you talked about the musicians, right? Mm-hmm. So if the musician hadn't spent hours practicing, the scales on their guitar, they're not going to be able to improvise and play the music in the flow. Like they had to actually build that foundation first. And this is actually what I go into in the course a lot. is that, if you want to bring a certain aspect of your, divine consciousness forward and express it into the physical world, well, the way that this time-space matrix works is that you have to learn how to operate in the physical world, right? You can't dance until you learn how to walk. You can't speak until you learn the language. So you have to actually go through that learning process, which is not always as flowing as you would like it to be. But the more that you do that, after you go through that process of putting in effort and doing the work, then the more you build an infrastructure and a foundation for you to be able to move into the flow. So, and very much like, becoming a true expresser of your, transcendent nature is really learning in those domains in which you want to express how to become fluent, so that you become like Jimi Hendrix on the guitar. It's an extension of your body. And then you can just flow out your expression in the moment because you've trained yourself to do that.
I wrote down, before you said it, I wrote down transcendence is not escape. And you said your transcendent nature. That feeling of wanting to either escape or bypass. But what really is being called for is transcendence, which means to fully alchemize, to fully integrate in order to transcend. But it's not escaping. When you have an awakening moment and you feel let's say a higher conscious energy that you had been, limited from, then there is this tendency sometimes, not always, but sometimes, to want to then just be there and not have to leave behind that which you kind of blame for having created the limitation. But it's actually always just you. So that's why you can't, there's no escape.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You got to jump into it. You got to really be willing to do the work, and that's what I think is, that's something I keep circling around to, is self-responsibility, because it's like, there's so much to learn here. There's so much to be done on this planet. And it really requires us to get our hands dirty sometimes and actually just get in there and being like, listen, I don't know what's going on here. As tempting as it is to just escape into the bliss realms of the non-physical, that's not what I feel like, at least for my path. I won't speak for anyone else, but I feel like, we're here for a reason, and it's important for us to learn how to take those bliss experiences and then actually bring them into the physical world, right? It's like we want to birth heaven onto earth, right, not escape earth into heaven.
Right. That'll just happen. That happens naturally when the body expires. That's when you're going to actually escape or, leave behind. That's when you actually fully transmute the entire physical experience. That is, but I feel like there is a balance. Obviously, there's always a balance, but there's a balance point between that, which you mentioned, that it's all about flow and not doing the preparation and not actually, the way that I said it was like having some scholarship that's behind it. But then there's also on the other side of it, is to be not taking action, to be in a constant state of waiting to exhale, I think. And I imagine that's something that you address in the Soul Spark course too, is at some point you do need to start taking action in order for that component to begin to be a part of it. Completely.
When you say that, what first came to mind was this idea of the term proactive procrastination, which I feel like is like a really a common thing. And this was definitely a sticking point for me, at times. And I got to stay on top of it too. But yes, so it's like at a certain point, action is the next step you need to take for your own growth. Mm-hmm. And what I mean is that actually facing the fears that you have and moving into it. And, we can come up with all these really clever escapes from taking action. Things like, I'm going to read another book on the subject, or I am going to just go meditate this issue away. And all those things are good. But again, like you said, it's all about balance, right? So, you could read another book on how to speak publicly, or you could go speak publicly, and guaranteed you're going to learn a lot more in the process of the latter than you are of the prior.
Yes, indeed. And you already started to mention self-responsibility. I feel that all of this speaks to self-responsibility, actually allowing yourself to your ability to respond to what it is for you to be able to offer the world. how is the self-responsibility, and what have you been speaking of that maybe in your videos about how to heighten your responsibility with yourself?
Totally. Well, I think one of the first things that's really important for us is the idea of de-victimizing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, victimization is one of the most insidious forms of a lack of self-responsibility, whereas we can't take control over our lives or take responsibility for ourselves because we're the victim of some other circumstance or some other person. So, and that's, a relatively common topic, but rightfully so, because it's still rampant in the world. Everyone's a victim of something. And, from a factual sense, you can say like, yeah, victims do exist, but from a subjective space as an individual, as long as you're looking at the world through a victimized perspective, then you're disempowering yourself. It's not until you decide, well, regardless of whose fault it is, it's still my responsibility to overcome this hardship. Then you're always going to be blaming someone else or hoping that whoever's fault it was will clean up the mess. But you can't depend on other people to clean up their mess, even if the mess gets on you. You have to take responsibility for yourself. So self-responsibility really very much is the first step. So like, how do you empower yourself through your perspectives of realizing that, listen, regardless of what happened to me, it's my responsibility to clean up. It's my responsibility to take care of myself, no matter what my wounds are or who's at fault for them. I'm the one that needs to dig myself out of this. And that then gives you the power, and then believing that you can, right? But then that gives you the power to start taking action in your life to make it a better life. And from that point, then you can start developing sovereignty. And I like sovereignty I like the definition that was given by a person named Jordan Hall. And it was basically, and I'm going to paraphrase, but it's basically your sense making ability, and then your ability to make good decisions in life. So it would be your ability to perceive your reality clearly without biases or judgments clouding your perceptions. Then your ability to take the information in and make sense of that information. And then from the sense that you've made of that, to be able to make a good decision about what you're going to do with that information. And then the agency to carry out that good decision and make it a reality or complete whatever goal that you had decided to carry out. And that, in a sense, is the definition of sovereignty. And so, but before you can start actually doing that, you need to de-victimize yourself. So de-victimize yourself, create sovereignty within yourself. And then I think the next step, especially as we're moving towards a new earth or creating a more harmonious planet, is then taking that sovereignty and then uniting with other sovereign people to then be more of like a collective intelligence and a collective action based community that is working towards goals that require collectives of people to achieve.
That's powerful. Yes, absolutely. And that I use sovereignty a lot too. And, with the metaphysical perspective, we see that energy is it's just literal. You only experience that with which you have a like frequency. And it can be difficult for us to kind of work through the stuff that happened when we were children, because it's really kind of hard to take responsibility for, because you literally couldn't, you literally, in the literal sense of being physical, you can't control what happened to you because you were physically underdeveloped, and so you had to be in that experience. So then I think then for me it helps to expand out and then think about the eternal nature of the soul and the whole idea of actually having a choice before you come here. So there's a reason, there's a facility, there's a lesson, there's a benefit there that you can work through. Or like you said, it doesn't really matter at this point. That is in the past. If you're an adult now, then that's something from this linear perspective. It's in the past. It doesn't exist anymore, except for you creating it in your own facility to respond to it continually. You're recreating it. So then, yeah, I think I just recently did some of that work. I guess you would call, a lot of people call it shadow work, where I kind of looked at some of the victimhood of my family. Literally, it took me back to my mother's victimhood, because that belief system and that response was then fed into me. And I just sat with it for a while, all of that pain and all of that, the really kind of dark stuff. And some crazy stuff started to happen in my life. Like immediately. If again, from a linear perspective, seemingly unrelated, but it wasn't, because it shifted my vibration, the frequency I was putting out about how safe this world is by shifting stuff, by sitting with my mother's abuse. It's kind of weird, but it really is. It really works. So that is something I'm sure the self-responsibility really you go into that in the Soul Spark course too, right?
Yeah. I touch it from different angles. When you talk about that, it makes me think of the idea of reframing and empowered reframing, and that there's a lot of really ugly, terrible stuff that happens in the world, and there's a lot of trauma. But ultimately, we are strong enough to overcome that. And in fact, it's the overcoming of these traumas that builds the character and builds the strength within us that creates the kind of people that we wouldn't have been able to become had we not gone through it. So it's like, from that perspective, you can start being grateful for it. And it's this weird thing, because it's like, who wants to be grateful for like this terrible thing to happen? But at the same time, it's like, I'll speak from my experience with drug addiction. If I hadn't been through that experience, then I wouldn't have grown in so many different ways. So it's like, yeah, the things are bad and you don't wish them upon someone. But when it does happen, it's actually, that is what starts inspiring your growth. And there's different responses. You can fold under from it and you can be a victim for the rest of your life, or you can choose to somehow alchemize that into your favor and become a stronger person because of it. Anything that, if you ask anybody in their life that's overcome a hardship, and if they've truly overcome it, they'll tell you the nugget of wisdom that they've learned from that. And then because they've overcome that, they have the capacity to help other people that might be going through it. So there's a lot of good that comes from overcoming hardship. And so reframing your relationship to it is a primary aspect of being able to, well, one, overcome victimization, but then also develop a healthy enough perspective of life that you can roll with the punches and then and continue to grow and evolve in the face of hardship. Self-responsibility
is a direct way to experience transformation, which then facilitates you to be in planetary service. This is the theme that you wanted to discuss here. This is what I'm feeling and seeing. Is that how you experience it?
Yeah, well, to truly be of service to the planet, you have to be of service to yourself. Mm-hmm. And so you have to take responsibility for yourself. Right. And, I find, as much as like I really enjoy how this connects metaphysically, it actually boils down to something that's really just basically simple, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, take responsibility for yourself and take action on improving your life and improving the life of the people around you. And I feel like sometimes we can avoid that a bit because it's more exciting to talk about, aliens and like spirit guides. Not that there's not a place for it within self-responsibility, mm-hmm. but I think that, when it's used to the level, when that discussion becomes a level of escapism is what's keeping us stagnant right now. I feel like there's so many people that have so many blessings, so many gifts to give to the world. And they have so many bright, high vibrations and new, like, cool, introspective, like, thoughts to share. Yet they're not seeing, like, how can I practically apply this in the world in a way that helps the people around me? It's still kind of a little bit more self-centered or a little bit more escapist. Yes. And so I really just, I keep finding myself wanting to come back to, how can we unite as collective groups and take responsibility so that we can, like, look at a lot of the issues that are going on. I feel like a lot of the philosophies regarding certain, like, multidimensional timeline theories in a way can be misinterpreted, in which people think, well, all I need to do is kind of go in my room and stay in a high vibe, and that is going to put me in a reality that's, like, harmonious. I'm not saying that's impossible. I'm saying I don't know that 100% for sure. And it doesn't seem like segregating yourself from other people that are of a lower vibration or of a different vibration and just focusing on a high vibration without taking tangible action in the world to shift things is actually going to help the planet evolve.
Wow, that's true. That is so powerful. That escapism, we have to keep our eye on it all the time. And by the way, so we're going to take a break here. Speaking of getting together with, actually, I should say the antithesis of trying to escape people who are of low vibe. We have a short little message about how to get together with people of a high vibe to be able to change.
Nice.
Hi everyone, it's Tricia Carr. If this is your first time connecting with my work, it's so nice to meet you. I'm a medium animal communicator. I have this podcast called Charmed Life with Tricia Carr. I love helping people connect with their own magic. I love helping people awaken to the multidimensional experience of the universe. I have an upcoming series of workshops, Journey with Your Multidimensional Spirit Guides. I will teach about the benevolent energies and guides that exist in our layered dimensional experience, and then lead everyone in a meditative journey to go into these realms and then meet the very beings who are on your spirit team. We have 3 different workshops. They all stand alone, but you could take one or you could take all 3. The higher cosmos, the star beings, the archangelic. We're going into the inner planes of the earth and Mother Gaia, nature spirits, elementals. Yes, I'm talking about fairies. And we're even going to talk about unicorns and dragons, the manifesting plane, and the heart and soul. Parallel selves, future selves, timeline work, telepathy, you guys, we're going deep. Journey with Your Multidimensional Spirit Guides are all live streamed workshops, so you can join from anywhere. You can also join in person here in Los Angeles. Space is limited for the local attendees. Every workshop is interactive and we'll have question and answer sessions. When we come together in this way, we just expand so much. You can find in the post below the link to read all about it, including the class agenda and a way to register your spot. I'll see you guys soon. And we're back with Patrick Haize, transformational musician and metaphysical counselor. We've been talking about so many things, including his Soul Spark course, how to take self-responsibility, how to transform, and how to be of service to the planet. And Patrick, you have a couple of videos that are really pretty recent in the top of your recent feed on your YouTube channel. One is about raising your vibration, and I just love that. You talk about relaxing into situations, events, and activities so that you can focus your chi and your prana. I love this. And you're talking about the paradox, which has been a huge message for me right now. Let's talk about that a little bit. I think that's a really powerful lesson to share.
Definitely, yeah. So in that video, I was talking about the paradox between the paradox of intensity and relaxation. Mm-hmm. And that, the best metaphor that I can bring forward to speak about this is martial arts. This is something I have experience with, and it just makes a lot of sense through that lens. And that's the idea that, if you're practicing martial arts, there's yin and yang, as you probably know. And the yang is the intense energy, and the yin is the relaxed energy. Or you could say more like aggressive and then more passive. Mm-hmm. And what you find and what you're taught in martial arts is that in order to actually bring the strongest yang, the most intensity, you have to relax into your movements. And so the more relaxed you are, actually, the more you can channel the chi or prana or life force energy through your movements. So actually, the more explosive your movements become. And this philosophy carries over into everything that we do. And as you notice in yourself, probably, the more relaxed you are, when you do get excited and you do bring intensity, the more it actually flows out. Whereas if you start restricting yourself when your excitement comes forward and you become tense, then less of it can flow forward. I mean, it's like a hose. When there's kinks in the hose, the water can't flow through it. Mm-hmm. So the idea is you have to relax the hose so there's no kinks in it, and turn the water pressure up at the same time. And then that becomes the balance of the two different sides of, relaxation and intensity. And this is hyper important because naturally it's like the instinct when you start getting into more of a trying situation is to tense up. But that's actually the time in which you need more focus and you need more of your presence energy to help you navigate. So it's like training yourself to move in the other direction so that when things get intense, you actually relax more, and then you can be more present and you can bring more energy through because more energy is needed in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I heard in that was that y'all hosts got to relax. I'm sorry. No, but it reminded me. It reminded me of. So I have a background in acting, and when you're backstage as a stage actor, you're backstage, and you're kind of visiting the lines and visiting the character, and there's all of this spinning, but right before you go on, in order to bring in the character, it's very much like channeling or doing an intuitive reading that I now do. But you have to completely relax. And it's a moment of surrender, that relaxation, that deep relaxation is. And surrender, is this something you've been talking about? Surrendering to that, I guess surrendering to the life force energy, surrendering to the chi. That's so that it actually comes in balance. Yeah.
Right. So, there's a lot of dynamics to that, right? Mm-hmm. So surrender is, for true surrender and to the flow of the life force energy does require a lot of inner alignment, right? Mm-hmm. So that's another thing, mm-hmm. And this comes back to martial arts. You can understand it in the physical form. If you don't have the right posture, then the energy is not going to flow right. And if you're actually bringing a lot of energy through with the wrong posture, you break a limb in while punching, because you have so much energy coming through, but the posture is incorrect. So this works also emotionally too. So, to be able to surrender into a particular expression, it does require you to do your personal work so that your beliefs and your thoughts and your emotions are in alignment with your actions. And then you can really surrender into the action, because there's not resistance, or there's not a perversion of energy like pulling you in different directions. So yeah, very much. I like the term surrender. Mm-hmm. Now, surrender is a term that does, I feel like, describe it really well. Though it's something that if you're working with indigenous people, you might want to use the term letting go. They don't like that term typically, surrender, very much, because it's like the warrior doesn't surrender. The warrior stays steadfast. So there's letting go, and this is part of communication in general. You learn how to communicate with different people. But yeah, I feel like surrender is very much. You want to surrender into your alignment. Mm-hmm. And so it's also like understanding what your alignment is and bringing it into balance. So, the mental sphere, the heart sphere, and then the will center, right? Mm-hmm. These three centers are recognized across all different metaphysical cultures and wisdom traditions, right? So having your mental space balanced, right? Having that in alignment with your heart, and your heart in alignment with your mind, and then having your will center and your actions in alignment with that, with all three. And when those things are aligned up, it really becomes a lot easier for you to surrender into whatever it is that you're doing, because you're not being pulled by different forces in different directions.
Integration, yes, in order for there to be that proper flow. And it's really amazing to me. Surrender has been something that I've been a meditative experience, working throughout my day. The paradox has been something that has been working through my experience too, and in my being. Actually did this. I'm wrapping it up in like one more month of this one particular ongoing series of classes that is becoming a book, and it's Archangels and Universal Laws. So I connect with the archetypal energy of an archangel and ask about a universal law. And the very first one I did was Archangel Michael and the Law of One. And there was so much in that about the paradox, because it was like holding the paradox, being able to be in that place actually puts you in a position of neutrality and power, and just again being present, because it is true that there is no such thing as time, and it is true that you are a time-oriented being. You know what I mean? Like both of those things are true, and being able to relax into the paradox is the place where real presence is.
This is huge. This is huge, because black and white thinking is one of the major destroyers of our power, and like I said, back to the yin and yang, it's like you need to bring both of them together. And that's really where the power is. I mean, you take an electrical circuit, you have the positive and the negative. The current doesn't flow without both of them. You need both of them present. So the idea is to find that connection point between the two, and then harness that connection point. And through the connection point of the positive and the negative, you is where the power actually lies. So, and this goes back even to Rudolf Steiner's teachings with the Luciferic and Ahrimanic, right? There's the two different sides of the tree of life. And to come down the center path of the tree of life, you need to harmonize the two polarities. And that's actually what boosts you forward. So paradoxes, I think this is something that we're really exploring deeply here in this time-space physical reality, is because it's what's tricky is that in the physical world, because we're in a time-space matrix, we experience different polarities at different times. And because we experience them at different times, and it's such a different kind of feeling frequency being on the other side of the frequency bandwidth, that it feels like it's separate. So it's like you feel this one energy and you feel it, for, an hour and a half, and then it goes away, and then you don't feel the other side of the polarity till, 2 days later. And so you think they're separate things, but they're actually on the same spectrum.
Right.
You're just on a different end of that spectrum, and realizing that it's the same spectrum and then being able to work with it as one is where you really bring the power from that whole spectrum into your harnessed field.
Yes. Even in physical reality, or, like atoms, the energy that is contained, we have positive energy, negative energy, and neutral energy. I mean, that's just how this experience is. And those are expressions, or at least our observation of somehow physical and non-physical energy. And so it's that observation position. It's that place of, yesterday I was all day long. My meditation started, and the guidance was about being able to be in either the positive or the neutral energy, but the neutral energy suffices. And essentially the message that I was walking around with all day long, trying to embody, was point a neutral kind of experience to anything, and it will fall into alignment. And that's a kind of, for me, it felt like surrender. It felt like coming present and being the seer, or being source energy, basically being one from that perspective. Not being source energy, that offends some people, but you know what I mean? I am source energy, and so are you.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, it's until you're neutral, you can't really see things clearly, right? Because you're projecting some sort of thing upon it, right? So the idea is that if you want to be a transformer for the, we say the good, we're getting into the neutral talk, then it's like touchy when you start talking about good and bad. But if you want to bring, say, like more upliftment and more life to nurturing to life in the world, as opposed to death and destruction, then what you'd have to look at whatever the situation is neutrally, so that you're not imprinting your own bias upon it. And then from that neutral observation, then you can choose to say, okay, well, I can harmonize with whatever it is, and to then bring it from where it is to another space. So to be a creator, you have to see clearly, which requires neutrality. And I like the term love neutral, right? So it's like you're neutral, but you're love. And if you actually think about what unconditional love is that unconditional love is like, well, if you love everything equally, then it's like super high vibe. Because you're not like, well, I love this versus that, and you're not like up and down, left and right. You're neutral with it. You're like, I'm neutral because everything is like, in a sense, equal, but I love everything. And then the amplification of the energy gets really high at that point. So love neutral is a term that I have friends that use, and I really like that one, because it's it encompasses neutrality, but then it also encompasses bringing that love force of goodness. And I feel like when we talk about something like unconditional love, this is something where it actually starts to move beyond the span of polarity. So like unconditional love doesn't have a polarity. You can say love and hate has polarity, but unconditional love, there's no opposite to it. That is like the creative force behind everything.
That's beautiful.
And it's neutrality also.
Yeah, love neutral. Well, also because language starts to pick up energy, like basically like thought form energy, and the limits that we can sometimes feel limited by language. And I like to talk about how I redeem certain words, because there's only so many that we all kind of collectively agreed to use in particular sets of language. So love neutral is kind of a way to reframe and redeem the concept of unconditional love, because we hear unconditional love and we don't know what that means anymore, because it has so much charge into it about things. It just becomes like it's lost its power. So love neutral, that's a really great reframe. I like that a lot. Thank you for that. And so we're just about out of time. I really wanted to talk about the video that you have about the 7 skills for the new earth. I don't know if that's exactly the name of it, but that's what my takeaway was. You talk about many of these things. So what's the name of that video? It's one of your more recent videos.
Yeah,
7 skills for something like that.
Yeah, it's seven skills for the future of humanity, I believe is what I called it.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Well, we have. Go ahead, please.
And my focus on that was like I was kind of I've been going through. Well, what is it that like? What are some meta skills? And by meta skill, what I mean is a skill that gives rise to other skills that are necessary. What are some meta skills that that humans really need right now? Because there's so much chaos in the world and things are moving so fast. And how do you keep up with that? And and then you look at media and all that's going on with media. And so I wanted to create a video that was like, okay, here are some core things that we can maybe start focusing on that's actually going to prepare us more for the future than just trying to get good at technology or just trying to master the newest like trendy skill that people that's useful in the world. Because as we know, I mean, with computer technology and AI and all this, like human skills might well be obsoleted. A lot of human skills might be obsoleted relatively soon. Mm-hmm. So then what skills do we actually need? And then also, this is also oriented more towards the idea of sovereignty, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of these skills that I brought up, one being presence, and I don't know if I can remember them off the top of my head, one being presence, one being the ability to be adaptable, one you might be able to help me with some of the other ones.
Yeah, I have them written down. Focus. Yeah, and the third one was focus and attention span. Mm-hmm.
Right. Focus and attention span, like all these kinds of things. Like, I mean, in a world that's this chaotic and with things happening this quickly, what skills do we actually need to be able to make sense of our reality and then and hold on to our sovereignty? Mm-hmm. So when there's too much information coming forward for you to make sense of, like, what do you do at that point? Well, typically a lot of people will start trying to use old tools in order to make sense of things that are so novel that their old tools don't work. Yeah. And so this requires, to a certain degree, a certain amount of humility, where you can be like, listen, I don't know what's going on. But then like the willingness to sit with, they call it beginner's mind, mm-hmm. and just being willing to like look at the patterns that are going on until you start noticing some consistencies in the signal. So you can be like, okay, this is something that's going on and this is something that's going on, without trying to label it right away, and have the humility to start making sense of your reality from a humble space. And so that video. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say what's really interesting that kind of sparked was a beginner's mind is not giving up your sovereignty, and that's sometimes I think that's a paradox to go into something. Let's just take an example of a program or a course or a book, and to put down your projection and have a beginner's mind, but you still hold your sovereignty, and so that's a kind of paradox to hold, actually.
Right.
It's a deepening experience.
Mm-hmm. In fact, being willing to admit that you don't know anything about something, mm-hmm. is an extreme quality of sovereignty, mm-hmm. because you're in much more of a powerful position by admitting that you don't know than trying to convince yourself that you do know, because the only thing worse than not knowing is thinking you know when you don't.
Again, another paradox.
Yeah.
Well, we are properly out of time now, Patrick. So you can find Patrick at patrickhaize.com. And if you, again, look in the description, you have access to Patrick's music, the Soul Spark course. And is there any last thing you want to tell folks about how they can connect with you, or, what you have on your heart and mind at this time?
Yeah, well, you can just keep your eyes and ears open. I have some music that's going to be coming out soon. You can check out the course if you're interested in more on that. And then you can find me at Patrick Haize Live on YouTube.
Cool.
And that's where I'm putting most of my content out. So thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Really, you just bless me so much, you and Bridget. And I just love you guys. And I appreciate the work that you do. It really is powerful. And
Beautiful. Thanks, Tricia.
Thank you all for joining us. I will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.